the parable of the dishonest manager. Jesus is trekking his way up to Jerusalem and his death, and in these last days is struggling to instill in his core disciples the key principles of his movement. Several of those are grave warnings about the hazards of wealth. But today's parable is particularly disturbing because it is very unclear what Jesus is trying to teach. The story is open to a variety of interpretations, and it flies in the face of all convention. The last 4 verses are a clutch of disconnected snippets that attempt to interpret the story but fail. Only the last clause is clear. You cannot serve God and wealth.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do now that my master is taking the position away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes.' So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil.' He said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he asked another, 'How much do you owe?' He replied, 100 containers of wheat.' He said to him, 'Take your bill and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. And whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust you to the true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve 2 masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please, be seated. Gee, you got the easy part. Reading it. It is one of the most complicated parables in any of the Gospels. But perhaps, as it is open to a lot of interpretation, perhaps it will help to do a little bit of background, otherwise known as it's the economy. First off, I do need to say there are precious few original ideas in this homily that I owe much to Brian McLaren and to my colleague Eric Miller, who passed along some good information to me. That really made me think. So let's put this in context, and maybe we'll have an interpretation that we can learn from. Everybody is under the Romans. The Roman Empire has occupied the territories that we're dealing with the entire time when we're talking about the Gospels. And as we read in that letter to Timothy, people are trying to live a peaceable life, preferably with retaining their head to the rest of their bodies, as this time is happening. But we have folks that have taken over. And what happens when people take over? They take over natural resources and they take over people. So hang with me for a minute. Lots of folks who may be wealthier, the wealthier part of this whole map is down around Jerusalem, down around the south. The farmers tend to be a little farther north. Oh, let's say up toward like Galilee and all that area. Starting to see a little economic breakdown here, right? Farmers in the north, down here. Which group is more likely to have a little bit of disposable income? I don't know about you, but I don't know any farmers, including those in my family, that have any disposable income, right? So, you've got the Romans who want grapes, wheat, olives for oil. Not so we can all stay in, Israel, Judea, all of this, but so that it can go back to the home countries. So, they get these from the farmers, but they are also taxing the farmers a lot. And the poor wind up being more devastated by taxes than the wealthy. Okay. Now, everyone's sort of trying to live a peaceable life, but you also have folks all under occupation who are trying to get ahead a little bit. Some folks in the South have some disposable income. Some of them go to their neighbors in the North and say, "You're having problems paying your taxes. I can help. I'll take care of it for you. All I want is the deed to your land. You don't have to worry anymore. Just pay me a portion of your crop when the time comes." So they've now gone from landowners to tenants, otherwise known as sharecroppers. Sound familiar? Man, you thought this was just a 20th century problem? Nope, nope, nope. And the folks in the South who now own the land are not exactly terribly popular. So for them to go up north and collect those shares might put you in a physically dangerous situation. So perhaps it would be better to find someone with a little more muscle. Maybe not the most skilled labor in the world, but someone who looks a little more like a bar bouncer than Dilbert. Now, may I propose that that is the background of our story today? There was a rich man who had a manager. The manager gets the call that, you know what, you have not been squeezing these tenants hard enough. I am not seeing the return on the investment that I want. Get the books. And he says, what am I going to do? I don't know how to do anything else. I'm this. I don't know what else to do. I can't do anything else. And all along, he has been using relationship so that he can get the money from the tenants. And he says, wait a minute. Maybe I need to think about this a little differently to save my own work. So he goes and he does what we hear about. He says to the tenants, oh, this is what you owe? Okay, you know what? Take some off. The tenant's like, okay, cool, great, thanks, here you go. And he keeps doing this, and he keeps doing this, and he comes back down to the landowner, the new landowner now, and the guy says, you know what? Pretty shrewd. Pretty shrewd. It's still a raggedy story, isn't it? It's still kind of ugly. Nobody in the story seems to be kind of a model of, you know, what you want sitting in the front of your Sunday school class. But I think that Jesus has a really good insight onto human nature with this. Because that fellow who had been working for the rich man, who had been gaining from that economy, guess what? He just got a big dose of compassion. He just realized that in an economy that favors money over relationship, he's expendable. Oh, you mean I'm just more like the poor than maybe I thought? Oh, and you just see this 1,000-watt light bulb sort of click on over his head. Oh, maybe more of us are in the same boat than we realize. Oh, maybe not everyone is going to benefit from this incredible putting money first as it looks, as we thought. Maybe there is no trickle down. Maybe it's all short-term gain and exploiting of resources without relationship. Things have got to change. Because now, this man says, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I'll probably still get canned, but at least I'll have somewhere to go. Maybe they'll welcome me because I tried to help them out. Because I saw for a minute, and now I'm beginning to see what this economy is really about. And what God's economy really should be. And as Jesus is getting closer and closer and walking toward his death, he's getting, you can almost just more and more anxious to get out those last essential lessons. As we go forward as a church and as a church, we're going to find that more and more people are looking for an alternative to this economy that looks so big and pretty, but it's so short term. And that maybe there's something more than this thing that we all put it first. I tend to put it first. I know it. And I shouldn't. And I know that collar around my neck, I often say this is God's way of keeping me on a short leash. It's to remind me what comes first, that God should always come first. that God's creation should always come first, that God's people should always come first, that relationship should always come first. It's what we're made for. It's what church is at its very, very core. It's what the love of Christ is at its very, very core. Does this mean to give up all money? No, it just means put it in its proper place, which is below the love of God. So when we say that we love God, I invite you to say it not just vertically. Oh, how I love Jesus. Love Jesus. Love Jesus. Love Jesus.